Hey everyone, what is happening? It is a brand new week, and we are starting a new unit. We are starting the nervous system, and this is basically the part of our body that connects us to our outside world. And so, what we're going to do to start is we're going to go through the parts and functions of the brain areas. All right, and so I've posted a document that looks just like this in Microsoft Teams, and we're just going to go through this and you can check it out. So we're going to start with just labeling the different parts, and I've already highlighted the parts. And so what we're going to do is we've got our frontal lobe, and then we have our parietal lobe, we have our occipital lobe, we have our temporal lobe, and we have our cerebellum. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we're going to add some more things to that. And the main part, those colored part, the yellow, the aqua, the green, and the orange, this all makes up our cerebrum. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what each part of the brain or hemisphere of the brain or section of the brain actually does. All right, so we're going to start with the frontal lobe, and this is what makes us really human. All right, so the frontal lobe is the most important. Well, they're all really important, but this is very important to making us human. And so the frontal lobe is involved with reasoning, planning, speech, movement, emotions, and problem solving. This is really important for self-regulation and self-control. Now we also have a section right around here, and this is called Broca's area, and this is involved with speech, and this is on the left side. For our parietal lobe, we have, this is involved with movement coordination, orientation, and recognition / the perception of stimuli. And our occipital lobe, you probably knew this already, but our occipital lobe is involved with visual processing. Our cerebellum is the gateway to our cerebrum, which is our brain, and it also is involved with balance and movement coordination. And so this is really important for movement patterns. So when people are playing a sport, their cerebellum is really involved with making sure they stay upright and coordinating information about where you are in space. Our temporal lobe, this is involved with the perception and recognition of auditory stimuli and memory of speech. Okay, so we've got our frontal lobe, our parietal lobe, we've got our cerebellum, we've got our temporal lobe, and we've got our occipital lobe. We're just going to add in a couple more areas here that really helps. That's just going to add some more information for us. All right, so just on the line between the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe, we have an area here. This area right here is called our primary motor cortex. And this is involved with skeletal muscle coordination, okay? And this part right here that I just circled, this is our primary sensory area, or our primary somatosensory cortex. And so we're going to, and this is involved with sense of touch, okay? So what you're going to be responsible for is knowing there's the 5 different areas, and what I would do is one of my strategies for remembering these things. And when you go on to post-secondary education, there can be a lot of information all at once, just like there is on this little picture. But what I would do is try to remember the main parts. All right, so we've got our frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, and temporal lobe. And okay, and so now we're going to remember 2 things from each area. All right, and so the frontal lobe is the part that really makes us human, and so it makes us have reasoning and planning. All right, so let's try to remember 2 things from the frontal lobe. From the parietal lobe, we're going to do movement coordination and then orientation. Okay, so that really tells you where your body is. Okay, and then occipital lobe, this is visual processing, so not too much to remember there. If we go to our temporal lobe, what I want you to think about is perception and recognition of auditory stimuli, so really hearing. And then our cerebellum is involved with balance. Okay, so if you can remember those few points, you're going to be good to go. All right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to just some more anatomy parts, the actual areas of the brain, some little parts of it. All right, and so you'll have this picture in your notes package as well. And remember, you don't have to print that off. I just want you to watch. Okay, so I want you to imagine that we've cut a brain. If you put your hand right in front of your face along where your nose is and you sliced your brain in half, this is that slice. All right, so you can see that this is our cerebrum that we saw already. Okay, and so this is cut right down the middle, and the brain's actually divided up into two hemispheres. Okay, so we have the left and the right hemisphere, and so what we have is we're looking down. We're going to go from the top all the way down. Okay, so the next part we have is called the corpus callosum, and the corpus callosum is what connects the left and the right side together, and it allows it to communicate. It's a bridge. Now, one of my friends from high school, he had a little guy, and he was born without or with a corpus callosum, but it was split up, so it wasn't connecting the left and the right side of the brain, and he had a whole host of problems. But it was one thing that you've probably heard of this: that our left side controls the right side of our body, or the left side of our brain controls the right side of our body, and the right side of our brain controls the left side of our body. And so, without a corpus callosum, it doesn't allow it to talk to each other. The next part we have is our thalamus, and this takes all the information in from our senses. And just below that, and you've heard of this one, this is our hypothalamus. And remember that the hypothalamus is going to regulate a whole bunch of different things in our body. It basically functions involved in homeostasis. It monitors body temperature, water balance, blood pressure, thirst, emotion, hunger. And so it also secretes a lot of hormones that we know about from reproduction. Right? It also controls all the autonomic processes in our body. Just below the hypothalamus, we have our pituitary gland. And this is, you know this from reproduction, it controls a lot of the different hormonal processes. Right over here, we've got our pineal gland. And this has to do with sleep and melatonin production. And this is also controlled by our hypothalamus. Right under here, we've got our amygdala. And this is involved with memory, emotion, and fear. At the top of our brainstem, we have the pons. And this is involved in motor control, sensory analysis. All right. And so we're going to be going through more of these things as we go along. And then we also have our medulla oblongata. And this is really involved with a lot of different things that are, this is our reflex center. So swallowing, vomiting, and sneezing. Right? And also the regulation of our heart and respiratory activity. All right. So what we've got is there's a lot of information here. And so what I really, really think you should remember is we need to know the corpus callosum. We need to know the hypothalamus. And you should have an idea of what the thalamus does and the amygdala. We already know what the pituitary gland does and the medulla oblongata. All right, so it's all about making sure that information is manageable. And then it's about practice. So drawing a brain, putting down, labeling the areas, and going through what those things do. I hope everyone has a very good rest of the day.